Hello, I'm not formally trained in programming, but I have spent the last half a year doing my year in industry from university in a physics lab writing software. And I just wanted to share with you a few things I've learned doing this. A lot of what I'm going to say is probably fairly obvious for anyone who has had training, but lots of people teach themselves these days, and I just want to make sure that others can learn from my mistakes too. If you've been following my videos, you'll know that I have been doing programming for a few years on and off now, and I've shown a lot of what I've done in my previous videos, where I've done things like design simple physics or games in Python and C programming languages. People in the comments have often asked to see the code, and I'm happy to share it, but looking back on it, it's pretty bad, so I'd rather you took it an example of what not to do. My previous largest piece of code was probably in Python, would have been about 200 lines to do one of the games I made. But this year I've written something that combines Visual Basic.NET code and R scripting language in about 2,500 lines of code, which is an awful lot more bigger and complicated than anything I'd done before. This forced me to think about the way I worked so that I could produce work that was easy to understand and I could keep going back to it after months upon months and I wouldn't get confused by it. First and foremost, the most important thing you can do is make sure you comment well. This means that anything isn't immediately obvious as a line of code by itself, you should probably explain what you're doing. Even if you write two sections of code together and the second one really obviously logically follows the first one, you might not go back and read them together at the same time. People always say if you read back your work in 2 weeks' time, you won't have a clue what you're on about if you don't comment it. And I never believed this until it happened to me multiple times. This is especially true if you're going to be giving your code to someone else to read, or it's a long project that you're actually going to have to go away and come back from it multiple times over the case of a few weeks or a few months. Also along the same lines, try and stick to a constant naming convention. I quite like to use camel case. Don't be lazy with your names. All function and variable names should be very much self-descriptive. They should say exactly what they do. I once had to read code from someone who just had no vowels in their variable names, as if it was text speak or something like they're trying to save on keystrokes. And it took me until I was mumbling out loud to myself to try and actually figure out what it meant. And this is obviously not a situation you want to find yourself in. If you're writing anything longer than, say, about 100 lines, you really need to pay attention to your organisation. And this is both before and during you're writing your code. Beforehand, you should maybe write out some lists or do some flowcharts, try and work out exactly what it is you want your code to do and what you need to be able to do it. Then, before you've even written a single line of code, try and make your folder structure. How you do this is up to you, but you'll probably want to have one big containing folder that will have multiple subdirectories for things like your actual code, your scripts, your audio files, your image files, your text files, or any other type of file you may need. And when it comes to actually writing the code, and your programming language allows it, don't be afraid to split your code into several different files. I personally like to keep every class in a separate file. This can help you in your code design if you use object-oriented programming, and it can also help you split things up into more manageable chunks, so you can find what you're looking for more easily. And also, as we go through this and you're splitting your code up into different sections, try and use functions as much as you can, and try and make your functions small and general. For instance, say you're doing an image processing, you want to be able to apply a function to different sections of your image. Instead of writing 5 different codes to work on each rectangle of image you want, it'd be a lot better to write 2 functions. One that can take a rectangle in your image and then pass it on to a second function that then applies a transformation to this rectangle. This is really useful for making your code more maintainable. For instance, if you realize your algorithm is actually wrong and you need to change something, if you've got 5 nearly identical functions, you have to make sure to remember all of them exist and change every single one of them in the same way. Whereas if you only have one general function, there's only 1 or 2 lines you'll need to change. Another good idea is to try and learn as many different languages and types of languages as you can. For every language you learn, the next language will be even easier to learn as your mind gets used to working in this kind of way. And every programming language has its advantages and its disadvantages. You want to be able to use the best tools for the job wherever you can. It will simply make things easier and quicker for you, and you'll probably get better results from it. I plan to upload some more videos soon where I show you these concepts in practice, showing them how my new code looks rather than my old code. And if you've got any questions or you've got any advice you want to give yourself, please feel free to put them down in the comments. And if you need specific help, I'd recommend Stack Exchange, which is a great site for getting help from other programmers. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and follow me on Tumblr and Twitter for news and behind the scenes information.